Okay, so as Jerry said, what I'm going to do over the next few minutes is to outline the training opportunities within the AgriFood ATP and hopefully also make links with some of the opportunities you've heard about elsewhere with things like the Agri-Skills Forum and the other training opportunities that are available. So just to start by saying that there are lots of players in the training park at the moment. A whole range of things we've heard about today. The various DEFRA investments, LANTRA, the other sector skills councils like Improve, and obviously universities, Landex colleges, various other players there who are all offering training. So what's different about the ATPs and what have we got to offer? It's a bit of a complicated slide, but I wanted to mention something about levels of training. You've heard a little bit about levels in some of the presentations today, and I've taken this and adapted it from the qualifications and credit framework to show where the various training levels fit. So what this shows is training from GCSE level, level 1, moving up through A levels, higher national certificates and diplomas, then up to degrees, masters and doctoral. So these are numbered as level 1 through to 8. And on the left-hand side, it gives a descriptor as the type of training or the type of stage of training that you would be if you're at level 4, 5, 6, etc. So where are the ATPs and where do they fit? Just to mention some of the things you've already heard about today. In terms of the apprenticeships that were mentioned by both Lee and Bertrand, they fit for level 2s, level 2 through to 5. So if you're thinking about apprenticeships, they're focused around those levels. You may be aware of some of the basis qualifications. So the basis foundation fits in at level 4 and the basis diploma up here at level 6. And you can see the ATPs training that we offer is level 7 and 8. So this master's level training is highlighted at level 7 and level 8. Now, of course, there are other players there already. Universities are offering masters in the areas, but I think the difference about the advanced training partnerships is that we're focused on providing training that's relevant to the business and is accessible in a flexible way. So most of the master's programs that are available are full-time masters or maybe in the short intensive blocks that we've talked about, making it difficult for industry to engage. And the advanced training partnerships are focused on providing training in a flexible way for businesses to engage in. So I'm going to address these areas within my talk. So our vision for the ATP, the AgriFood ATP, is that it spans the entire agri-food supply chain. I think we've heard earlier from Alan that the areas of the agri-food supply chain are all interlinked. They're not, if you're working in animals or in crops, quite often they're linked together. What do animals eat if not crops? If you're working in food, you need to know where that food is coming from. So we can't deal with things in isolation, and that's why we put together the supply chain approach to our ATP. Our vision is to be responsive and flexible to what the customers want. So in terms of yourselves here today, we really want to hear about what you want from the ATP in terms of the training. We've already done this in a number of ways through a survey. When we put together our proposal, we engaged with a number of people throughout industry as to the type of training they wanted, and we've got industry representatives within our board, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And we'd also like to get your feedback today if you think there are areas that are missing. I'll show a pathway in a little while, which Amy showed you earlier, about how the training builds from CPD to PhD, so I'll explain more about that. And the idea that we want to establish a vibrant community engaged in knowledge exchange. We've heard that that's a bit of a missing link at the moment, so we'd like to show that. The other important thing for the ATP is that we have our Bbsrc funding for 5 years, and we need to be financially sustainable. It says by year 7, and that's because in year 6, I'll show you in a little while, the partners are providing a subsidy in that year. But by year 7, we need to have a well-established training framework the industry want to engage in and are willing to pay the training cost associated with that. So starting then with the first point, that our training spans the entire agri-food supply chain. So we'll be offering courses that span from natural resources, things like water quality, soil quality, through to animal and crop production systems, processing and packaging, right through to the consumer. And to do that, we've set up 4 subject-specific subgroups, one focusing on animal science and animal production, one on the crop science and crop production, one on food and nutrition. And because we recognise there are a number of areas that go across all of those, we also have a subgroup looking at transferable skills. So there'll be a number of courses. For instance, something like grassland management doesn't fit neatly into one of these. It affects both the animals and the crop science. There may be courses on things like research skills, which are transferable across those 3 areas, and also things like bioinformatics, where we've had some interest already, and that would be dealt with through our committee looking at transferable skills. So a little bit more about how we're trying to be flexible and responsive to industry need. I'll just show you the governance structure for our ATP. We have a management board, and I'll show you the membership of that in the next couple of slides, which includes representatives from industry, as do all the training subgroups. And then we have the task groups that look more at the detail here of how the quality assurance is dealt with at the university level, and also obviously the contractual side of things. And we also have a communications task group, which involves Guy Attenborough from the AHDB and Jane King from Farmers Weekly helping us with the publicity and marketing of the ATPs. So that's the governance structure. As I mentioned, we have industry representation on management board. So to show you what that looks like, we have membership from all of the partners, so University of Nottingham, Rothamsted, Harper Adams and Cranfield. And then industry representation, so Lord Haskins here, Ian Croop from AHDB, Tom Jenkins from Biosciences Knowledge Transfer Network, Stephen Walker from Camden BRI, Helen or Andrea from NFU, and then Karen from the Chilled Food Association, and Mary Bosley, who's now an independent consultant and most recently worked with Waitrose. So we have industry input at the highest level in terms of overseeing the direction of the partnership and approving the budgets and the activities as to how we assign our Bbsrc funding to the various activities of the ATP. And then importantly for the actual training subgroup, so this is where the real work is done, deciding on which courses will be eligible for ATP funding and will go into the programme. They're all chaired by members of industry, and there's also wider representation within those groups. So I'm not going to run through all the names here, but just to indicate, perhaps on the crop side, because that's the panel or the group that I sit on, we have an industry chair, who's Rosie Bryson from BASF, and then for each of them we also have an academic co-chair to share the workload of chairing those committees. We have representatives from each of the partners, and also representatives from the levy bodies associated and also directly from industry. So they're the people that are helping to guide us on what the content of the courses should be and making sure that we're offering courses that are relevant to industry. And obviously we recognise that this is just a small number of people advising us, and their remit is also to go out and talk to other people in the industry and get that intelligence back to the subgroups. The other way that we're continuing to be flexible and responsive is to get your feedback. So we will, in addition to this meeting, we'll be holding an annual congress, which will be a vehicle for ATP partners and participants to provide feedback. And I think it's already been mentioned, there is a feedback sheet in your pack today, and we'd be very keen for you to fill that in. And we also have an online version which will be emailed. So if you could fill either of those in, it's very important for us to get your views on the training that we're offering and whether there are gaps in that programme. So the second point was the providing training from professional development through to PhD. And Amy's shown this diagram before, but I'd like to take a little bit of time to perhaps talk you through that pathway. Now, when we did our initial survey of industry, there seemed to be much more interest in the CPD and the short courses than the credit-bearing modules leading to formal postgraduate qualifications. I have to say that now we've started promoting our courses, the interest does seem to be gathering on the formal courses, but we will be offering the full range. So you can engage, and your colleagues can engage at the level of one-day workshops, field days, research updates, attending the annual congress, or they could invest in coming along on modules that will be credit-bearing and could potentially build through to a higher degree. So Amy, for instance, has already taken 15 credits with the Rothamsted Award, and she mentioned that she's hoping to continue with the eventual aim of moving forward to a professional doctorate. So she already has 15 of these 60 credits. What she would need to do is to look at building on those credits, taking further courses, and she might get to a stage where she got 60 credits and decided, well, actually that's enough, that's as much as I need, and you can step off at that stage and take a postgraduate certificate at that point. But there are other options available. You could continue to build up training credits towards a postgraduate diploma, which is worth 120 academic credits, and then again can step off there or carry on with a 60 credit research project to build towards an MSc, or an extended research project in industry which would lead to the professional doctorate, which is going to be a new award for Nottingham and for the partners at Cranfield and Harper Adams. So it's similar to a PhD, but includes a much more formal training element, so 120 credits of training plus a very extended research program which will be based in industry. There's another route here where a Master of Research is another research qualification which includes 60 credits of taught modules and then a larger research project than the MSc. But the key thing I think to take out of this is a pathway. So you can sign up and you can sign up and join the ATP, and you're not saying at this stage, I definitely want to do an MSc or I definitely want to do a professional doctorate. You can build from the start and you can step off at points that suit you. I should also mention that for people who already have, for instance, a postgraduate certificate, if it's in a relevant area, it's possible that that can be accredited through a process called Accreditation of Prior Learning and brought in at that stage. So you might have a relevant postgraduate certificate that you could bring in and start immediately working towards a higher qualification. So they're the pathways that are available, and I hope there's really sort of something for everyone there within the framework that we've built up. So just an example of what one of these might look like, and the colours aren't great in this room, but they're supposed to represent who's offering the different credits. So for instance, the purple colour here representing the University of Nottingham. In this particular combination of modules, we've got statistics, resource capture by crops, genetic improvement of crop plants, and then we've got the Rothamsted current research in crop protection here, input from Harper Adams, Cranfield on the sustainability and soil erosion control, and Harper Adams here, integrated farm management and potato production and management. So that could either be a postgraduate diploma or in combination with a research project based in the person's own company could work towards an MSc. And the important thing to mention is this is in no way fixed. The combination of modules is chosen by the individual and their company to suit their own personal business need and professional development needs. So there may be somebody who's particularly focused on crop protection. If so, there are another 30 credits they could take on plant health management, perhaps replace this module here. So it would be up to the individual and their line manager, together with advice from colleagues within the ATP, to build a program to suit themselves. There's nothing fixed about this. The only thing that is fixed is that if you're moving on to a research degree, whether that's a Master's of Research, an MSc which has a project, or the professional doctorate, you would need to do a research methods or statistics type module within that to prepare you for the research project. Everything else is up for choice. And that's been a real challenge because that's very different to how universities usually set about their MScs. Normally MScs are very fixed because they're very specialist and you have to take a certain combination of modules. So this is a really sort of innovative way of offering a combination of modules which will build towards an MSc in agri-food. And then another combination might be an MRes pathway that cuts across food and animal science. And here you've got 60 credits worth of modules that are currently available, a larger research project moving towards a Master of Research. I just wanted to emphasise that although in the previous two slides I've shown modules as coming from Harper, Adams, or coming from Cranfield, or coming from Nottingham, one of the key things within the ATP is that we're able to offer these collaborative training provisions. So the potato production and management module that was mentioned 2 slides ago is being led by Harper Adams and administered through their quality assurance procedures, but it actually involves a number of other partners. It involves Cranfield, who are within the ATP, but also Cambridge University Farm, who are well recognised for leading research in potatoes, and Sutton Bridge crop storage research as well. So the idea of this, this particular module is a 30-credit module, and again, you can have options to suit your own areas. So we recognise that people coming to this might have very different interests. They might be more on the storage side, they might be more on the agronomy side. So they can choose a combination of units within the module to suit themselves. Everyone would need to do the foundation in potatoes, which is a 2-day unit. And in fact, they're all 2-day building blocks towards the 30-credit module. So they would need to take this one and then 4 out of the remaining 6, depending on their own interests and their own business requirements. In terms of assessment, you might think, well, how do you assess that if everyone's done a different combination? The idea of the assessment would be an assignment that the participant would write based on how they're learning, reflecting on how their learning could be applied within their own business and within their own role. And that's a model that we're hoping to use for many of our modules, so that rather than being exam-based, the assignments will be reflective based on the learning and how that's applied within their own role. Okay, I've already touched on research degrees, but just to emphasise that part-time research degrees registered at one of the academic partners are also available. So MRes I've talked about, equivalent to a 1-year full-time research degree, MPhil equivalent to a 2-year full-time research degree. And then it is possible to do a straightforward PhD, if you like, which you might recognise as a 100% research. But what we're really promoting is the professional doctorate, which I've mentioned in that pathway, where you combine 120 taught credits with an original research project in company with a supervisor based in academia, but also one in your own home company. Another area that we think is really important is research updates. So something I think was mentioned in one of the earlier presentations is how does industry get to hear about sort of cutting edge research, and there's been lots of advances that perhaps you might not be aware of. So we're planning to organise research updates where colleagues can come in from industry for half-day or full days to find out about some cutting edge research relevant to your own business. And an example of that is some work going on here at Nottingham using X-ray CT tomography to visualise soils and roots as they grow through soil systems. So this is actually a column of soil showing different aggregate sizes. You can also measure pore density, look at connectivity for water moving through the soil. And this is a growing root system within the soil which can be visualised in 3D. And clearly there's lots of research opportunities for using that, and one way of finding out how that might be useful is to come in, talk to the people who are using it day to day. So that's another thing we're planning to run within the ATP. And then in terms of funding for the ATP, in terms of the training bursaries available, I mentioned the sustainability on one of the early slides. So for the first 3 years of the programme, 100% fee bursaries will be available to participants. That doesn't mean the training is free, because of course you've got your own commitment of releasing staff to attend the training, and also if there are any accommodation requirements, travel requirements, that would need to be covered by the individual companies. But this is for the fee bursaries. So 100% fee bursaries are available, but we have to work towards sustainability once the Bbsrc funding has finished, which is at the end of year 5. So the plan is that in year 4, 75% bursaries will be available. In year 5, that reduces to 50%. And then in year 6, the academic partners will be offering a 25% fee discount. So effectively industry would be paying 75%, so stepping down, so that by year 7, industry would need to pick up the full cost of the training. And so it's really important for us as an ATP that we are building a base of training that you really want, that you're willing to pay for, and won't only engage in if it's free. That's the key thing. In terms of accreditation, I see 2 types of accreditation. First of all, accreditation for professional development, and this is being achieved by working very closely with professional bodies such as BASIS and IFST, who are both here today, and also British Society for Animal Science. So particularly for the one-day courses or week-long courses that are not credit-bearing, it's really important that they have CPD points available, because a number of people are part of those associations and they need to collect those points. They don't want to be taking some training that's not eligible for those CPD points. So we'll be working very closely with these associations, and they're represented here today, and we'll be happy to talk to you. In terms of the higher degrees, so the PhDs, MScs, etc., they are accredited through the 3 academic partners, Cranfield, Nottingham and Harper Adams. We will be launching very soon a new professional MSc in Agri-Food and an associated PG certificate and PG diploma with modules that can be selected from across the partnership, as I showed you a little bit earlier. As I mentioned, it's been a huge challenge to get that through the academic panels, because it is so different, but it should be ready to launch within the next few weeks. Another important thing to emphasise that Jerry mentioned back in his introduction is that we are facilitating credit transfer between the different ATP consortia. So for instance, if you're in the food industry and you've registered within our ATP and are taking a number of modules, but find one that Reading have on offer that suits your programme of learning, you could take that module within the Reading ATP and bring those credits towards your PG certificate or MSc here in the Nottingham-led ATP. So that credit transfer is really important to make sure that you can benefit from the wider training available across the 4 ATPs. And then in terms of access to the training, I mentioned very early on it's postgraduate level training, but there may be a number of people in industry who don't have a BSc and therefore for normal university entrants would find it difficult to access master's level training. But we do have procedures in place to recognise industrial experience and prior learning to meet those industry standards, entry standards. So if you've been working at a higher level for a number of years, we can accredit that through the accreditation of what's called prior experiential learning, bring that into the ATP to allow you access onto one of these higher degrees. And finally, the community development. So one of the things I put up was that we want to develop a community feel, so that we've got people talking between industry and academia, but also industry talking together, which emphasises the point that Alan was making about forgetting the competitiveness and working together. So this year we've got our launch event, and then subsequent years we'll be having an annual congress that moves around the partners. So won't always be based here, it will be based at Cranfield or Harper or Rothamsted. And within that annual Congress, we'll be inviting speakers from industry and academia, and we'll have people who are registered on research degrees giving presentations on their research work, and also opportunities for debates in various areas. Because a number of people will be working at a distance, because part of the flexibility of the programme is that it won't all be contact, it won't all be intensive days, there'll be e-learning opportunities and blended learning opportunities. We're looking to develop an e-community as well through setting up a virtual common room where people can go on and talk about the courses. We've also got a Twitter feed set up which you can all link into. I think there are various tweets going off today, my phone keeps buzzing anyway, about the event today, and that will alert you of new courses that are on offer and things that are, everything that's going on within the ATP. And we've also got a LinkedIn group set up and also a Facebook group. So lots of ways of keeping people informed of what's going on within the ATP. So just to summarise then, the AgriFood ATP has a wide range of courses available, everything from one-day professional development through to PhDs, and they will be delivered in a flexible way, whether that's through attending a course, whether that's through e-learning or blended learning, as in a combination of the two. I think one of the most important points is that participants can select the combination of courses to suit their own business needs and personal development. There's not a fixed structure in place. We want to offer what people want, not just a rigid structure that they have to follow. The one-day courses, but also the accredited courses as well, will be linked in with the professional bodies, the relevant professional bodies in the food industry, the animal or the crops industry. And as I've mentioned, we're trying to be as flexible and responsive as possible to what industry wants. The fee bursaries, 100% fee bursaries, are currently available, and that will be reducing through the programme until we reach a point in year 7 when there's no longer Bbsrc support. And we're trying to develop a community feel so that we can all gain the most from knowledge exchange from academia to industry, but in the other direction as well, and hopefully between industry, to try and overcome some of the barriers to knowledge exchange. Okay, that's me. Thank you.